Mental strength ain't about never crying. It's about never quitting. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned into something real today. We're diving into the kind of strength you don't build in the gym. We're talking mental muscle. See, life don't always ask you to lift weights. It asks you to lift yourself. And some of y'all been dragging around pain, people, and problems for too long. So let's start at the root. Doc, when folks say be strong, what does that really mean? Is it silence? Is it smiling through the storm? Or is it something deeper? Break it down for us, Dr. Peale. What truly is mental strength?
Steve, that's a powerful way to begin because you're right. Mental strength is not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of resilience. To be mentally strong means to master your inner world, your thoughts, your reactions, and your beliefs so that no matter what life throws at you, you don't collapse. You may bend, you may cry, you may doubt, but you don't break. Mental strength begins the moment you realize that your response is more powerful than the problem. Let me share an example. I once met a man who lost everything in a house fire, his home, his possessions, even his childhood photo. But as he stood there looking at the ashes, he said, "They didn't burn down my faith. They didn't burn down my will to rise again." That's mental strength. Not because he didn't grieve, but because he didn't surrender. Another young woman I counseled faced constant rejection in her career, over 100 job applications, no callbacks. Most people would have internalized that as failure, but she told herself every night, "My time is coming, this is temporary, I am not my rejection." She eventually landed a position that changed her entire life because she refused to let her circumstances define her worth. Being mentally strong is knowing who you are even when the world doesn't recognize it. It's saying, "I will endure even when your knees..." You see, strength isn't shown in the loud moments, it's proven in the quiet decisions. The choice to get out of bed when you don't feel like it, the decision to forgive when bitterness feels more satisfying, the courage to believe when fear is shouting at you. And Steve, here's the truth. Mental strength is not born, it's built. Like any muscle, it grows when tested. So the very pain people try to avoid is often the training ground for their inner power. Mental strength is not about appearing tough, it's about being unshakable because you've anchored yourself to faith, discipline, and purpose.
You can't live a positive life with a negative mind. All right, now listen up, because this part right here, it changed my life. You ever notice how your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy all in the same day? It's like some of y'all are living in a prison with bars made out of your own thoughts. So Dr. Peale, I want to ask this straight up. How do we start taking control of that inner dialogue? That voice that tells us we ain't enough, that we're going to fail, that nothing's ever going to change. How do we train our mind to be strong instead of sabotaging us?
Steve, that's one of the most critical truths we must face. Our thoughts shape our lives. Before a person can become mentally strong, they must become mentally aware. The battlefield is not in the world, it's in the mind. What you think repeatedly becomes your belief, and what you believe becomes your reality. That inner voice you mentioned, it can be trained. It must be trained. Mental strength is not a trait you're born with, it's a discipline you commit to daily. The very first step is to observe your thoughts without judgment. Too many people absorb negative thoughts and mistake them as facts. A mentally strong person learns to pause and say, "Is this thought helpful? Is it true? Or is it just fear dressed as logic?" You see, Steve, the mind is like a garden. If you don't plant good seeds, weeds will grow by default. And those weeds worry, self-doubt, envy, fear. They don't need permission, they just creep in. So you must become the gardener of your own mind, uproot the lies, water the truth, expose the limiting beliefs to the sunlight of reality. A mentally strong individual learns to speak back to their thoughts, They interrupt the spiral. They say, I may have failed, but I am not a failure. I feel fear, but I am not ruled by fear. This is hard, but I am capable. It's not about ignoring struggle. It's about confronting it with a new mindset. Mental strength is also about repetition. You don't win one mental battle and call it a day. You show up again and again. The voices may not go silent overnight, but with discipline, your voice becomes the loudest and the strongest. And here's something I want every person listening to remember. You don't have to believe every thought you think. Mental freedom begins the moment you realize you have a choice. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. Guard it, shape it, train it. That, Steve, is the beginning of real strength, not in muscle, but in mastery of the mind.
You can't control everything, but you can control how you respond. Hey now, let me tell y'all something real. Life's gonna throw things at you that you ain't ready for. People gonna disrespect you, disappoint you, and sometimes things just won't go your way. But here's the key. Do you let it break you, or do you learn how to breathe through it? Dr. Peale, how do we become the kind of person who doesn't explode when things go wrong, who doesn't give up when emotions run high? In other words, how do mentally strong people control their emotions instead of letting emotions control them?
That's a powerful question, Steve, because if your emotions control you, then your peace is at the mercy of the world. But the mentally strong person learns this truth early. You are not your emotions. You are the one observing them. The first step toward emotional control is awareness. Mentally strong people don't suppress emotions. They recognize them. They pause. They say, I feel anger or I feel anxious, and instead of reacting blindly, they respond intentionally. Now, that doesn't come naturally. It's developed through practice, through training the nervous system, through choosing reflection over reaction. Let me give you an example. There was a businessman I once worked with, high-performing, wealthy, but easily rattled. One missed deal and he'd spiral into rage or self-pity. He asked me for help. We didn't talk about money or strategy. We worked on his response. I had him write down how he wanted to feel instead of how he wanted to react. Over time, he became calmer, clearer, not because the problems went away, but because he changed the way he met them. Another example, a young woman I counseled lost her job and felt overwhelmed. She thought it was the end, but I told her, don't let a temporary loss create a permanent identity. We practice stillness, journaling, and refrain. Today, she runs her own business, thriving, peaceful, because she learned how to lead her emotions instead of following them. Mentally strong people are not emotionless, far from it. They feel deeply. But they've developed an inner anchor. Their peace doesn't shatter with every storm. They remind themselves, just because I feel it doesn't mean I have to act on it. Just because I'm afraid doesn't mean I'm not strong. Just because I'm angry doesn't mean I have to shout. Emotional strength is spiritual strength. It's what allows you to remain centered when everything else is spinning. And in a world that constantly tries to pull you off course, that centeredness, that is real power.
If you want the results nobody gets, you got to do what nobody's willing to do. Hey, let me tell y'all, we live in a world that's obsessed with now. Fast food, fast fame, fast money. But here's the problem. Quick fixes don't build real foundations. Mental strength, that's about playing the long game. So, Dr. Peale, I gotta ask, how do you train your mind to say no to what's easy now so you can say yes to what really matters later? How do strong people master patience, discipline, and that long-term mindset?
A powerful mind is not one that gets everything instantly. A powerful mind is one that can wait with purpose. Delayed gratification is not about denial, it's about clarity. It's about knowing what you truly want in the long term and having the strength to walk past the short-term distractions that threaten to derail you. Mental strength is deeply connected to your ability to endure present discomfort for the sake of future excellence. The weak mind looks for escape, the strong mind looks for growth. When you delay gratification, you're not missing out, you're building up, you're exercising the very muscle that separates good from great, comfort from character, distraction from destiny, and this principle is spiritual. Throughout time, the greatest wisdom has reminded us to everything there is a season. But modern life tempts us to harvest without planting, to reap without toil. That illusion leads to emptiness. When you practice delaying gratification, you are training your soul to focus on the eternal, not just the immediate. You are saying, I trust the process. I trust the timing. I trust that what's truly worth it will not come easily, and that's what makes it valuable. This kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. It quietly chooses the harder path because it's the right path. Mentally strong people develop rituals, not just goals. They align their habits with their highest vision. They wake early, they study deeply, they say no to the noise, not because they don't feel tempted, but because they have decided that their future is worth more than their impulse. Remember, this instant pleasure is fleeting, but patient purpose is forever. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you are not just building a habit, you are building your future.
Your emotions are valid, but they should never be your master. You ever been so mad you said something you wish you could snatch right back? Or been so anxious you froze when it was your moment to shine? Man, I've been there, and let me tell you, emotions are powerful, but when they control you, they can wreck your peace, your relationships, your entire path forward. So Dr. Peale, how does a person become mentally strong enough to feel their emotions without being ruled by them? How do you master your reactions instead of being a slave to them?
Emotions are like the weather, real, sometimes intense, but never permanent. And just like storms, if you learn to pause, you can ride them out without letting them destroy your inner house. Mental strength begins with emotional self-awareness. You cannot control what you refuse to recognize. And so the strong person does not suppress emotion. They observe it, understand it, and respond rather than react. Anger, sadness, fear, they all have messages, but they are not meant to be your compass. If you allow anger to drive your decisions, you will crash into regret. If you let fear write your story, you will never leave the first page. Consider the case of Nelson Mandela. After 27 years in prison, he emerged not with vengeance, but with peace. He had every reason to be bitter, but he chose wisdom over wrath. That is emotional mastery. That is strength that goes far beyond the body. Or take a more everyday example. A woman I once knew lost her job unexpectedly. She felt devastated, embarrassed, furious. But instead of acting out or giving up, she channeled her energy into prayer, reflection, and planning. 6 months later, she had started her own business, one that gave her more freedom and fulfillment than ever before. You see, emotions are signals, not shackles. The mentally strong individual doesn't ignore them, but they don't hand over the steering wheel either. Practice pausing, practice breathing. Practice listening to your higher self before responding. Each time you choose calm over chaos, peace over panic, you are strengthening your mental muscles. Let me remind you of a simple truth. The calmest person in the room is usually the most powerful. Master your emotions, and you master your life.
Failure ain't the end. It's a chapter in the story of strength. Man, I failed more times than I can count. Lost jobs, got rejected. Plans didn't work out. But every single time I got back up stronger, wiser, hungrier. See, the difference between the weak and the strong ain't failure. It's what you do after failure. And I know somebody out there right now is carrying guilt, regret, shame because something didn't go right. But maybe it wasn't meant to break you. Maybe it was there to build you. So Dr. Peale, how can we train our minds to stop fearing failure and start using it to become stronger?
Steve, what you've just said strikes at the very core of personal growth. Failure, in truth, is not a tragedy, it's a tutor. The mentally strong recognize that setbacks are not signs of weakness, but signals for learning. You see, failure only destroys the person who refuses to reflect, but to the one who pauses, examines, and adjusts, failure becomes a force of transformation. The strongest minds are not those that never fall, but those who rise with insight. Mental strength is built when we shift our inner dialogue. Instead of saying, I failed, therefore I'm not good enough, we begin to say, this failure has shown me what to improve. It is a change in internal language that changes external resilience. We must stop treating failure as a final destination. It is not a wall, it's a doorway. But that doorway only opens to those who persist, who analyze, who dare to try again. If you want to grow mentally strong, you must reframe every disappointment as development. Let go of the fear of judgment. Fear of failure is often fear of what others might think. But strength grows in silence, in the quiet work done after you've stumbled, when no one is watching. True confidence does not come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from surviving them. Each time you fail and rise again, your subconscious begins to understand, I am not fragile, I am resilient. And mentally strong individuals look at their worst moments not as defeats, but as data. They don't let emotion cloud their learning. They calmly observe the lessons and apply them. Steve, the mind becomes mighty not by success alone, but by how it handles failure. That's where the gold is. That's where strength is forged.
You can't always control what happens, but you sure can control how you react. You ever had a moment where somebody says something wild to you and every part of you wanted to clap back? Yeah, me too. But I've learned the hard way, reacting in the moment can cost you peace, opportunities, even relationships. See, emotional discipline, that ain't about being weak or passive. It's about knowing you got power and choosing when and how to use it. Peale, we live in a world that pushes our buttons every day. Social media, family drama, bad news. How can someone become mentally strong enough to stay grounded and not get emotionally hijacked?
Steve, that's a vital question. Emotional discipline is one of the most powerful signs of mental strength. To possess a sound and controlled mind means to respond rather than react, to stay rooted while the world whirls around you. Let me say this clearly, emotional discipline is not suppression. It's not pretending you don't feel frustration, sadness, or anger. It is about channeling those emotions wisely, not being a slave to them. Mental strength begins when you stop allowing temporary emotions to create permanent decisions. It requires developing pause before replying, before judging, before acting. The mentally strong create space between impulse and action, and that space is where peace lives. In that stillness, your higher mind, your reason, your values has time to step in and lead. Another important shift is understanding that you are not your emotion. Emotions are signals, not commands. Just because you feel anxious doesn't mean the world is falling apart. Just because you're angry doesn't mean someone deserves your wrath. Observe your emotions, don't obey them blindly. Mental strength also involves choosing what deserves your energy. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every insult is worth answering. You gain nothing by reacting to every provocation. True strength is often shown by walking away in peace, not charging in with fury. Developing emotional discipline takes training. It's a daily practice of checking in with yourself, of staying aware, and of choosing intentional calm. You may not control the storm, but you can always choose to be the eye of Steve. When people learn to manage their emotions, they don't just become mentally strong, they become dangerously powerful, because the one who stays calm is the one who leads.
Whatever you focus on grows. So choose wisely. I've been guilty of it too, man. Spending hours thinking about what I don't have, what could go wrong, who did me dirty. And guess what? That energy never helped me move forward. It just kept me stuck. You can have the biggest dreams in the world, but if your focus is all over the place, or worse, stuck on negativity, you're driving with your eyes in the rear view. Peale, in today's distracted world where notifications, opinions, and chaos never stop. How can a person train their mind to focus on what really matters and build strength through that?
Steve, you've nailed one of the most overlooked pillars of mental strength: focus. Mental strength is not just about handling storms, it's about staying centered while they rage. And that begins with where you consistently direct your attention. Focus is a form of self-respect. It's telling yourself, I will not waste my mind on things that break me down. You see, the human mind is like a garden. Whatever you water grows. If you constantly water fear, regret, or resentment, they will flourish. But if you nourish thoughts of purpose, growth, and gratitude, you create a foundation of strength and stability. To build mental strength, you must learn to guard your attention like a treasure, because it is. You must get intentional about what you consume, who you listen to, and what thoughts you allow to take up residence in your mind. Focus isn't just about eliminating distractions, it's about choosing what's essential. When you focus on what you can control instead of what you can't, on the solution, not the problem, on your growth, not others' opinions, you build inner power. Mental clarity grows when you simplify. Learn to say no more often. Cut the noise, limit your time in the company of negative. Use your mornings to reset, your nights to reflect, and your days to move deliberately. And remember this, scattered minds never build strong lives. You only have so much energy. Don't let it be divided by every flashing light and passing thought. Discipline your focus and you will discipline your future. In the end, the mentally strong don't just avoid distractions, they rise above them because their eyes stay locked on where they're going, not on what's trying to pull them back.
What you say to yourself when no one's watching, that's what shapes your life. I've met folks with talent, good hearts, even big dreams, but they never make it far. You know why? Because deep down, they talk to themselves like they already lost. If your inner voice is always tearing you down, no amount of praise from the outside will build you up. I've learned that being mentally strong starts with how you speak to yourself, especially on the rough days. So, Dr. Peale, how can someone transform that inner voice from their biggest critic to their greatest coach?
Steve, you've touched on one of the most powerful forces in human life, the inner dialogue. What we repeatedly whisper to ourselves shapes the foundation of our identity, our choices, and ultimately our destiny. To become mentally strong, a person must first become mindfully aware of how they speak to themselves. Most people live unconsciously, letting past failures, harsh words from others, or cultural noise write the script of their inner voice. But true strength comes when you decide, I will rewrite this script. The voice inside your head can be your jailer or your liberator. It can tell you you're not enough, or it can remind you you've come this far. and you're still standing. That shift isn't magic, it's practice. You must challenge negative thoughts the moment they arise. Don't let them take root. Replace them with truth, with encouragement, with faith in yourself and in your purpose. Here's something to hold on to. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. You wouldn't tell your child they're a failure. You wouldn't say to a friend, "You'll never make it." So why say those things to yourself? Mental toughness grows when your inner voice becomes a steady source of support, not sabotage. Remind yourself of your victories, celebrate small progress, and when you fall, and you will, speak to yourself with patience, not punishment. You don't need perfection. You need persistence. You need a voice that says, "Keep going." That voice becomes your internal compass when the world outside goes dark. Train it. Feed it with truth, and soon when life tests you, you won't collapse under pressure. You'll rise. Because your strength won't just come from what others say about you, it will come from what you believe about yourself.
If you're still breathing, God's not done with you. I've met millionaires who feel empty and folks with nothing in their pocket but fire in their soul. You know the difference? One stopped growing, the other never did. See, life ain't about arriving, it's about evolving. Mental strength isn't something you achieve and frame on the wall, it's a daily grind, a choice. So Dr. Peale, in a world that's constantly changing, how do we make sure our growth never stops?
Steve, the moment a person believes they've made it, they begin to decline. Life is movement, and so is the mind, the spirit, and the soul. Mental strength is not a destination. It is a process of becoming day by day, season by season. To keep growing mentally strong, one must first develop a mindset of lifelong learning. No matter your age, achievements, or education, there's always room to stretch, to learn something new, to unlearn something harmful. Growth doesn't always mean climbing higher. Sometimes it means digging deeper into your values, your flaws, your faith. Staying open to growth means staying humble. It means being willing to say, "I was wrong." It means listening when correction comes, even when your pride wants to fight back. The strongest minds are not those that never break. They are those that bend, adapt, and rise wiser. Surround yourself with voices that challenge and uplift you. Seek experiences that stretch your understanding. Even pain, when faced with courage, becomes a teacher. If you want to keep growing, don't run from difficulty, study it. Let it show you what you're made of. Also align your growth with purpose. Grow, not just to achieve more, but to serve better. When your reason for growing is tied to helping others, you become anchored in something greater than ego. That kind of growth doesn't burn out, it expands. And lastly, believe this, you are never finished. As long as you're alive, God has something for you to learn, someone to impact, some way for you to evolve. Keep your heart teachable, keep your spirit open. That's how you stay mentally strong, not by standing still, but by continuing forward, no matter how far you've come.
When life knocks you down, it's your faith that lifts you back up. Man, I've had seasons in my life where everything seemed to fall apart, money low, family struggling, dreams stalled. And the only thing that got me through was, see, when you run out of strength, your faith becomes your fuel. But I know some folks listening right now feel distant from God. They think mental strength is all about willpower, but I've learned it's about divine power too. So, Dr. Peale, how does building a relationship with God strengthen your mind? How does that spiritual connection become your foundation when everything else shakes?
Steve, you've touched the very heart of true mental strength. It is not built on muscle, but on meaning. It is not sustained by ego, but by faith. A deep personal relationship with God transforms your inner world and in turn reshapes how you face the outer one. The mentally strong do not walk alone. They lean on a power greater than themselves. They recognize that human will is finite, but divine guidance is infinite. And it is in this surrender that real strength begins. When the mind is anxious, the heart is heavy, or the path is unclear, the presence of God is a refuge. It is not weakness to pray. It is wisdom. It is not helplessness to seek divine strength. It is humility, and humility is the foundation of true courage. A person anchored in faith doesn't crumble under pressure, because their peace does not depend on circumstances. It flows from the certainty that they are not alone, that every storm is allowed for a reason, that even the hardest trials are leading somewhere purposeful. You become mentally strong not just by pushing forward, but by kneeling down. When your thoughts are chaotic, remember God is not the author of confusion, but of clarity. He whispers truth into the soul that listens. Talk to God daily, not just in crisis, but in calm. Thank Him, ask Him, trust Him. This consistent dialogue becomes the spiritual discipline that sharpens your mental edge. You will find that when others break, you bend. When others quit, you endure. And above all, never forget this. When your spirit is connected to your Creator, your mind becomes unshakable.
After all this, one thing's clear: mental strength ain't about being perfect, it's about being persistent. It's about getting back up when life knocks you down and not letting fear write your story. You grow when you keep moving, when you stop looking for comfort and start chasing purpose. So if you're tired, rest, but don't quit. If you're afraid, pray, but don't freeze. You got more in you, way more. And the moment you believe that, everything changes. Stay strong, stay grounded, and keep growing.